Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Really excited here to be the moderator of this session. I'll start with introductions here. My name is Matthew Segretti. I'm the CTO and Senior Vice President of Product Development at LIDP. We provide software and solutions specifically to the life insurance industry. And so automation is a pretty big part of the software world, but also within the life insurance space, as it is with most other organizations. So I'm excited to moderate and also share some of my insights, but we'll go down the row here and continue introductions.
Hi, I'm Richard Winter, CEO and founder of Winter Corp. We're independent consultants focused on analytic data management at large scale.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. I'm Reena Jain. I started my career as an oil field engineer with Schlumberger. Post that, I moved to Universal Aquatech, which is a manufacturing plant which manufactures aquaculture feed supplements. In my role as a VP of Operations and Business Development there, I launched a portfolio of products. Post that, I pivoted to tech. I joined an edtech startup, a fast-growing edtech startup based out of India, which offers K-12 supplemental education. I worked as the VP of product amidst the pandemic and performed the digital transformation of the 15-plus brick-and-mortar establishments. Post that, I moved to USA to complete my MBA from Chicago Booth, and currently I'm working at McKinsey as an operations and tech associate consultant. Happy to be here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Harsha Suryareddy, and I'm the owner and CEO of Reds and Solutions. We are a custom software developer for a variety of industries, and we provide web-based and app-based solutions to our customers. Thank you.
Excellent. So I think I'd like to get today kicked off with challenges, problems you see within your respective industries, and let's start there just so we have a kind of a baseline, because I know we all come from very disparate industries here today, so maybe getting an understanding of what challenges you see. Richard?
So I work primarily with large data warehouses, data lake houses, data lakes. These are used in every industry. And the challenges are just that they are so large in many dimensions that it requires automation to manage them. And in one example, in a medium-sized insurance company I talked with recently, they had in their data warehouse that they were migrating to the cloud, they had 2,600 tables. Each of those tables had, and among those tables were tens of thousands of columns or data elements. And so how do you ensure that every data element is correct after the migration? It's an impossible task without automation. It's one example.
Excellent. Reena?
I'll talk about the challenges faced in manufacturing, logistics, and supply. A major challenge which faces manufacturing plants is the coordination of activities across various plants. There is a lack of visibility regarding equipment health and the output, the quality of the output across the plants. It's not uniform. The second major challenge is deteriorating health in these hardcore manufacturing plants, which require a lot of physical labor. One example which I can think of, not manufacturing related, but regarding the laborious activities. I vividly remember this conversation I had 6 years back when I was in Schlumberger. It was with my favorite supervisor, and we were on field for 9 months, and after 9 months, we were going home. I asked him that you must be really excited to meet your 2-year-old son. And he said that I am excited, but every time I meet him, I'm filled with grief because of my broken back. I can't even carry my 2-year-old son. And that was because of the laborious activities which he performed consecutively over 10 years in a field, in an oil field. So this is a major challenge which needs to be worked on. And another industry which I will talk about is e-commerce and retail. I worked at Amazon as a product manager and was aware of the warehouse operations. Challenges which major e-commerce giants and retails face is the increased transactions and the requirement of timely deliveries for maintaining the customer loyalty. We will talk more about this in detail. Over to you, Harsha.
Thank you. So some of the challenges that we typically face as a software company is technology is constantly evolving. In the beginning, it used to be everything was web-based, or you installed an application on your computer, but now tools are getting more sophisticated. Everyone wants access to everything on the internet. You log into something these days most of the time now, and now the next evolution of that is obviously everyone wants it on their phone. So now we need to look into making sure everything that we develop is not only compatible with an application, a web-based platform, and also looking at app compatibility. And then to expand on that even further, now we're starting to see variables where certain applications are required to be compatible with your wearable technology as well. So there's a lot of various devices when you're developing that needs to be taken into consideration, and we're going to talk about addressing some of those issues and how we can effectively design tools so that they're compatible across the various devices.
Excellent. I know within my industry as well, and Harsha aligns there, from a software perspective, automating tests is huge, right? Ensuring validity and value in what those tests are, but ensuring that that product goes out the door in a not just stable state, but a bug-free state, which is incredibly important. So I'll talk a little bit about how we approach testing in an automated way. But then even as an industry, within the life insurance industry specifically, we have a lot of issue with policies. The time it takes from an individual to say, hey, I want something, to the time they can actually get it issued is typically not always seamless and easy. And so a lot of our clients come to us saying, how can we reduce that time? How can we reduce that time so that we can go from someone asking a question through underwriting, through all the the hurdles and hoops that need to be taken, and get them so that they can be covered as soon as possible. So those are some of the challenges we face certainly within our industry today. So I'll talk a little bit this afternoon as well with how we approach that as a software vendor too. So a lot of great stuff. So as we move into furthering this discussion, why do you think those problems are there within these industries? Right? We just talked about what those problems were. Well, why are they problems?
So the example I gave, data quality in a data warehouse or data lakehouse, what I hear from customers is that one of the biggest causes of failure of the investment in a data warehouse is when the end users, the people who run the business, feel they can't trust the data. If they ask a question of a data warehouse because they want to make a business decision, they get an answer which is obviously wrong. Then they think, well, everything that I get from this data warehouse might be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
How can I make any decision based on this data? And on the other hand, often the people in information technology who are developing the data warehouse, they test everything, but they don't have the business knowledge often to know whether the data is correct or not. So what they're usually doing is testing that the functionality of the data preparation software seems to be correct, or the data warehouse operates correctly. And so there's a disconnect. And I've recently been hearing about products which automate the monitoring of the quality of data and the testing, to automate the testing. One technique for doing that is to have the testing be metadata driven. So there's somewhere, there's a data dictionary that contains information about what the data is supposed to look like from a technical perspective, it's got to be in a certain syntax or whatever, or obey certain rules, constraints, and also from a business perspective. And if you can take that information, that metadata, use it to automatically create tests and validate tests, then you can do this testing on a large scale. And there are remarkable stories about companies who have adopted this technology and have operated for now as long as 2 years without a single end user coming to the data warehouse team and saying this data is wrong.
That's awesome. I'm going to actually jump on that a little bit when we start talking through the automation process, because we have an incredibly similar issue, again, within the life insurance industry, because it's so complicated. Some of these policies and the rules that need to be defined within our industry are just crazy, right? And no one human knows them all. And a lot of times we find, even when we go and we consult with our clients or with prospects, they don't even know the rules. So we see that quite a bit within the industry, which is, how do you define that and how do we resolve it? So I know we'll get to the resolution here in a little bit, but I'm gonna be piggybacking on that too.
Are those compliance rules? Or?
They're not even always compliance rules. A lot of times they're just rules an actuary came up with, 20 years ago. So they happen to put it in the system and they're like, oh, that actuary's been gone for 10 years. So now how do we ensure that, as we introduce new functionality into systems and stuff like that, that it conforms to those rules? So a lot of interesting stuff, a lot of gotchas that we come across. So, Rena?
Yep. Let's start with e-commerce. We know that e-commerce picked up a lot recently, the last few decades, but pandemic was the influx point where, it really grew. It saw fast expansion. And hence, that led to increased transactions and increased need for these swift deliveries. And increased competition led to, among these e-commerce companies, led to everyone vying for maintaining a loyal customer base and thereby, focusing on enhanced customer experience. So that was the reason why the challenge arose that, we need to keep our customers happy.
Right.
Otherwise someone else is going to grab them.
Definitely.
And as for manufacturing, I would say that industrialization and tech led to expansion and scalability of manufacturing plants.
Right.
Now that you've scaled it, now that you've expanded it, you need more tech. You need to leverage tech to maintain it, to automate it, because maintaining multiple plants is not easy. So it arose because of tech, and then you expand. You need more tech to ultimately live up to the expectations. So that's the cause.
Interesting. Harsha?
Yep. So just trying to think about some examples that my company has faced when we've been deploying, right? Some of the stuff that customers always ask us is, if it's an app, it needs to be efficient, right? Like there's an energy component to software, right? It does drain battery, and some of the more energy intensive operations that your app is doing will drain your battery very quickly. There's also the quantity of data that's being processed through your app or your application that needs to be taken into consideration. Some of the ways we handle that is like load balancers. We do energy optimization on these softwares, and these tools are starting to become more and more automated, where there isn't a human intervention. There is no code that actually goes in to say, hey, if I'm seeing a large volume of data, split it up into 2 servers, or parse it out and say, do it in batches of 10, do it in batches of 1,000, whatever the values may be. A lot of this stuff is starting to become automated, where the systems and tools intuitively know when there's large volume, when there's data-intensive processes happening, to start threading those into the right buckets and making sure that everything is running optimally. I think you've probably seen a lot of this, and you probably work on a lot of this stuff when you're designing and developing your tools.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I know we've actually started leveraging AWS quite a bit
Yep.
for exactly what you just mentioned,
Yep.
right, to scale, right? We need an infrastructure that a human doesn't have to always be looking at. And AWS has a lot of those functionality, but it's also important to note that that requires the software to be designed to work within that environment
Yeah.
too, right? And that's not always. It's not always just use AWS isn't always the right answer, because if trying to put a square peg into a round hole kind of thing, right, doesn't always work. And so how do we manage those expectations and understanding of the technologies we're using and ensuring that it works, right?
Yeah. One thing that is interesting is, I mean, maybe not interesting, but this is essentially becoming a norm, is any major, provider is offering these tools built into their applications, right? Amazon, Microsoft, Google, they're all implementing solutions and techniques to automate a lot of this stuff, which is very interesting to see, and I'm sure there's a competitive aspect to this as well, that they're trying to make sure customers are coming back to them. But it's it is the future. It is going to, like, automation is happening not just in the direct space, right? In the physical world, there's also automations happening in the digital world as well. That's really taking over, and it's, I would say, improving efficiencies.
Absolutely. So I guess within our industry, again, software and life insurance specifically, we see a lot of the issues arise because when I talk with the C-suites making decisions, a lot of the time, their answer is, well, it's the way it's always been. And so when I go to a prospect site and they still have a mainframe with a 3270 window, they don't even have a graphical user interface. It's a terminal window with text-based, like you've got 32 characters by 70 characters to work with, and that's what they're keyboarding through. And a lot of it is, it's hard to move. It's hard to make those decisions when you have such a mission-critical system in place that's managing hundreds of thousands or millions or even billions of dollars in revenue for these organizations. How do you justify moving that, and how do you move it safely? And I think the answer through a lot of this is automation, right? And that's going to lead into our next topic here, which is, I think, where we'll spend most of the rest of this discussion, which is, how does automation solve those problems for you guys? So, Richard?
So what Rena said reminded me of an example recent example I heard that fascinated me. So this is a large auto manufacturing plant in Europe where they use a very large number of robots for doing welding. This is the final stage of manufacturing where they're putting together the body of the car. So all these robots are welding, and they're terrific, but the robots from time to time, they sort of go out of spec and they begin making bad welds. And the problem they were having is they didn't have a way of discovering the bad welds until the car was finished, at which point, more or less, the body had to be scrapped. And that was a very expensive way to deal with that quality problem. And what they found they could do is, if the robots all generate data as they operate. And what they found they could do is feed that data in near real time into a data warehouse where it was analyzed in near real time to find that the robot was beginning to wobble in terms of how it was welding. And they could then intervene right away and prevent, take that robot out of production and therefore have fewer or almost no bad welds, go into the production system. So it was all possible because of an ability to do this data analytics, the data updating and the data analytics in near real time at large scale. That was the automation piece that made this stepwise increase in quality with much greater throughput now, higher quality, and less scrap.
So
That's
actually,
a very interesting example.
And that-
yeah, I'm actually hearing multiple steps of automation through that single process, right? I mean, you went from a the car's complete and it's now delivered to, or going through an inspection, to now you have data from, a physical machine being automatically fed to your data warehouse, so there's an automation. Then you
Yes.
have a process of automation doing that evaluation to say what is, is this within our realm of acceptability? And then you have an automation of report, right?
Right.
I'm curious, was there then a human that has to go to that machine and stop it? Do you know?
I
'Cause
think there's.
that
a
would be the
human at
ultimate
that
automation.
point. But it's kind of interesting that there's not a human until that point.
Right.
Because you don't require a human to make the decision that this robot has to be taken offline.
Right.
And this is an example of what you were just talking about, using tech to make modern manufacturing operate successfully.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Rena, go ahead.
Yep. Broadly, the automation in e-commerce and manufacturing would comprise of definitely AI, which would include all aspects of it. That is AI analytics, which would further lead to predictive maintenance. And again, that comes back to the robot example where, it is predictive maintenance of the robot, which ultimately, in a way, denotes that, it's not fit for usage anymore. So AI and IoT, that's Internet of Things. I think these two are the broad tech buckets which cater to a lot of the automation processes.
Absolutely, yeah.
Rena, do you have any insights into, the Amazon warehouses and stuff,
Yes, I do.
and how, unfortunately, I've never seen it in person,
All right.
but I hear that it's like sci-fi in there.
It is amazing. So Amazon warehouses, they use two kinds of bots that I know of. I don't know if they've increased any in the past 1 year. They use robotic arms, and they use full-on, complete bots, which are called as Amazon Kiva bots, Kiva. The robotic arms, they do a lot of the arm processes in the sense of painting, welding, that kind of stuff, which requires just an arm. Whereas the Amazon Kiva bots, they take care of picking the package, packing it, stamping it with all the details, and sending it to the required process center.
Nice.
So, and that's a complete bot.
Right. Do you know, what caused them to go into this particular direction, right?
Definitely.
I think
No, I love, how you are sort of unpacking the details of this. As I earlier mentioned, that human body is not meant for physical laborious tasks 9 hours a day, 5 days a week. An Amazon warehouse associate, think of him just stamping, just putting on the stamp of which consists of your name and the RFID tag or the barcode. Just this action of stamping caused a lot of. They realized that it caused a lot of shoulder pains and
Wow.
in the employees, and that is when they moved to these robotic arms and Amazon Kiva robots. So to prevent the deteriorating health of the employees, they moved to this.
Awesome. So I actually see a lot of automation, right? So now we have robots that, paint and all that stuff. There's also bots that package.
Yeah.
But then there's also a software component to this, which I think it's identifying where that package goes, right? Printing a stamp, making sure it's assigned to that particular customer, and then putting it in the right delivery truck, which I'm pretty sure is also automated. And then having that truck, go and, getting that manifest to that truck driver, this needs to go to this particular state. All of that is software driven and it is automated. The only human aspect of this is where the driver actually starts driving, reads the notes on where the end delivery should go to. And that's where the automation ends, right?
I wouldn't say it ends there.
Maybe it
I
goes
would
a
say
step
that
further, yeah.
For last mile delivery, companies like Amazon, they've started using drones and autonomous vehicles.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm like,
Yeah.
it's right till the very end.
Yeah, I think they've, I don't know if it's mainstream, but I think they've piloted it in some universities and some small towns.
Yeah, I don't think it's mainstream. But
Yeah.
Definitely.
But really cool stuff. So some of the challenges that I face is, I think we were discussing earlier, is when we design an application, we need to factor in what devices is it going to be used on. And web-based, sure, there's web browser considerations, Chrome, Edge, Mozilla Firefox, whatever else you can think of, Safari. I guess. And then, so there's that aspect. Then now we're going into, okay, are people on phones going to be using it? Which means now we have to work on Android and iOS. And again, you have the implications of, well, on Android and on iOS, you have all of the various web browsers that you're using. Now, if you're going to build an app-based solution, that might mitigate some of that, but we also have to think about customers. Our customers are going to be intuitive enough to know that they can go download this app, or are they just going to go to their browser and type in the website and try to log in through there, right? And then you also have the variable aspects of it, and now, there's a whole gambit of electronic variable devices. You have the Samsung, you have Google's Pixel, I forget what the watch is called, then you have the Apple Watch. Those are some of the challenges we face, and they're quickly developing solutions on how to automate some of this stuff. So the general consensus that most of the industry is shifting to is coding it in one application, in one framework, and that framework distributes it across the various platforms, essentially. So now we talk about QA testing, ensuring the functionality. So now, instead of testing in 7, 8 different environments, 8 different applications or programs or browsers, you're now testing in one location and then pushing that code to every single one of these devices. So you just scale down the labor by a factor of 7 to 8 because of automation. From the resourcing perspective, when I say before, this is like 3-4 years ago, you were developing on these various aspects. You need teams of engineers, teams of software professionals working on this. Now it's gone to, you need a team of 1, maybe a couple of developers, a couple of testers, and now you have a product that's available for launch in 10 different platforms. And I think you're a QA person. You're probably seeing a lot of these tools and technologies, and your life is probably getting a lot easier and simpler because of this.
Awesome. Yeah, I know within the software industry, it's really easy, like I said, talking about automation tests, integration tests, those kinds of things. We actually decided to write our own tool to assist us with a lot of that automation because there's a lot of software and a lot of tools out there and available, but it's also important for an organization to understand when those tools don't meet a specific need, right? Certainly there's use cases for a lot of them, but what we found was, like I mentioned earlier, life insurance is just so complicated that there wasn't already a tool out there. And so what we wound up doing was we wound up working with our QA experts and our business analysts, and we devised a tool to exercise our system from a business-specific perspective, right? You were talking a little bit earlier, how do you validate that business data? Because we all know that the tech folk will validate the tech side of it. And I think there's often a gap in knowledge with the tech folk understanding those business requirements. And not that I would expect them to, because that's not their forte, right? That's not where their skill set is. And so what we did was we said, all right, I don't want my QA staff wasting their time and their mental capacity on validating a point and click of a developer's test notes, right? That's not where their value is for us as an organization. Their value is in their business knowledge. Their value is in their expertise within the industry. I would rather them try and break the system in a meaningful way than just to say, does A plus B equal C, right? And so that's what we did. That's what we devised as a tool, was that ability to say, let's let the QA folks define those testing requirements, and the developers can continue their normal workflow. And this tool allows us to go through an automation process that exercises the system regularly with the criteria that those analysts set forth. That has increased our developer productivity, because now they're not getting as much kickback, because now we're exercising those things for developers that they weren't aware of, because they never knew things even existed, right? Well, now they're getting that feedback immediately. Our QA folks are now able to get into more rigorous definitions of either A, new functionality that they want to see, or being able to exercise the system more robustly. Go ahead, yeah.
So is this like testing the business rules on the data itself?
Yep, absolutely.
Like, as I told you, I also come from a life insurance background.
Right.
That was one of the challenges. The biggest challenge was it wasn't the actual ticking on the screen.
Right.
Screen itself. Do the calculations, do the actuarial calculations.
Match.
Line up.
Absolutely.
And those actuarial calculations are extremely complicated. So is that the kind of stuff that you
That's exactly what it's doing. Yeah. Yeah, so we actually just rolled this out a little bit later last year, so we've only actually had it in place for a few months here, but the results have been exceptional. Our clients have started using it, and they've been just floored with the ability of it to, again, that let's let the actuaries be crazy. Let them define whatever they want, right? And we've been able to exercise all those things.
I think I'll represent you in Canada. I'm like right in the middle of all the insurance companies.
Right, there we go. So, it's complicated. It's complicated for any industry. It's complicated for anyone. But it's also important to note that, those tools aren't always there right away. And if you have someone, certainly there's partnerships with Harsha and other software industries and software organizations that can allow you to say, we need a tool, to be able to help us with this. We don't need those humans involved in ways that is laborious in any way, right? And I think that applies, again, across industries. So, I encourage everyone to reach out and say, if you have an idea for those kinds of things, reach out to the appropriate folks, because, again, those tech minds are out there to help us build those tools in advance in all sorts of ways, which is exciting. Again, I'm a tech guy. I'm super nerdy, so I love talking about this kind of stuff. So, a lot of fun stuff. So actually, as we start talking about tools, that leads me into kind of this next question, which is, what tools are you guys using to help facilitate this automation? Is it an industry-specific tool? Is it a general tool? Talk to me a little bit about that. Richard?
Okay, so the first example I gave, the data quality, automating data quality validation and testing, that example, the customer used a tool from a startup company named Validator, spelled Validatar.
Ooh, validator.
And they invented this metadata-driven data quality testing, which they're delivering now on-prem and in the major clouds. So that was the key to that story. The other one about the robots in the factory, the data warehouse platform is Teradata Vantage in the cloud. Teradata is a venerable data warehouse platform, which many people might imagine it's been around since the 90s, might imagine it's now out of date. But it's actually been updated significantly for the cloud over the last few years. And it was chosen for this factory example because of its ability to handle this IoT data and analyze it at scale. It's pouring in very fast and it has to be entered into the database rapidly and analyzed rapidly. And it was able to satisfy that problem in the cloud.
That's awesome. Rena?
Yep. Let's start with e-commerce. So I'll talk about 5 tools which e-commerce and retail is leveraging to increase efficiencies, to increase the customer experience, and to just reduce the workload on the internal staff. Starting first with one which we most often encounter, AI-powered chatbots or virtual agents. And this is across industries
Yep.
in a way. So I implemented this in the edtech startup that I was working for. And the reason for that was it was a startup, a very small startup, a very lean team with just 2 sales representatives. And when one of them would go on a vacation for 15 days, sales would be drastically dropped. So that is when we realized the need of managing the workload using chatbots and virtual agents, where for normal queries, which does not require a lot of thought process, can be routed to chatbots, whereas the complicated queries can be routed to the sales representative. Talking about the second technology which was leveraged in e-commerce, automated inventory management systems. Companies like Amazon or any retail company, they face a lot of problem in managing their inventory, especially across different locations. It's a huge task. So technologies like RFID tags and IoT sensors, they help in maintaining the stock and prevent any situations of, a stock out.
Yeah.
And that's
Missing
very important.
inventory, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly, just inventory. Moving on to the third, drones and AVs for last mile delivery, as I spoke about it recently. That is so useful in congested areas. Think of a place like New York. Your parcel is in New York, but it still won't reach you on, I don't know, say Christmas Eve,
Right.
because the roads are just packed.
Right.
So last mile delivery for that. The fourth one is automated checkouts and self-service. For example, Amazon's just walk out technology, where you go into the store, there's no representative selling you stuff, you just pick it up and walk out of the store. And the fifth would be AI-driven analytics for targeted marketing. When you open your Amazon app, you find products which you are interested in. It saves you time of scrolling through thousands of products. Targeted marketing. That covers the technologies leveraged by e-commerce and retail. In manufacturing, we spoke about robotic arms. This is also used across industries, for example, in restaurants. For example, think of a restaurant chain which recently implemented this. It's a burger chain, and a majority of its clientele is the school students, and they come via the school bus. It stops there, and so they have set up cameras outside their location where from a mile away they can note the bus coming, and that is when the bots inside, they start frying the fries
Interesting.
to enhance the experience, to reduce delays, to have a faster
That is great.
overall process.
Right. And you actually touched on that earlier too, right? Customer satisfaction.
Customer
Who doesn't love
satisfaction.
crunchy fries?
Who
Fresh
exactly,
fries, yeah.
exactly. And the next technology which is leveraged a lot by manufacturing is IoT devices, sensors to monitor equipment health
Yes.
and thereby predictive maintenance of them.
Awesome. A lot of good stuff there. Harsha?
Sure, I'll keep mine brief because I do want to get to some Q&A here. So I talked about the challenges that we face in trying to get something published across various devices, and not getting into all the tools. One of the ones we use primarily is React, just like an open source solution with a lot of modules where you're just pulling all these modules together, and once you build the tool that you're looking for, you can then publish it across the various aspects. Another tool we've actually used fairly frequently is actually chatbots, because whether it's retail, manufacturing, whatever it is, anytime you have a website, there is a training aspect to it that a lot of people struggle with, right? You can't just deploy a tool and expect it to be used in the manner it is meant to be used. And I'm sure you probably encounter this a lot as well. So we use chatbots and have a repository of knowledge using AI that then we take and feed questions, and then we search the knowledge base and then try to put together an answer that we believe is most accurate for that customer. And, 80% of the time, it responds and the customers are satisfied, which, reduces a lot of call time, not having a actual resource to answer these calls physically or, go to that particular location and to resolve it. We've seen a significant decrease in the need for labor to address some of these questions, some of these issues, technical issues. But, chatbots are available and usable for any industry, and I think they're, so far, I do like to play games with them sometimes, try to see how good they are. But they're not foolproof either, because I believe, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have read this, but some dealership implemented a chatbot to sell their vehicles, and they were able to trick the chatbot into having a legally binding agreement with that customer to sell a car for $1. And, and the lawyers went through it, everyone went through it, and they're like, this is legally binding. They took that down within the hour after that. It was a lawyer that did it, so he knew it was legally binding. That's how he was able to get a really fast response on it. But, there is a lot of potential for good with automation. There's also some pitfalls that we need to be aware of and watch out for. But I think so far from my experience, it's been an additive tool. It's been supportive. It has reduce the amount of resources required to develop something that might have cost millions of dollars, has been scaled down to a fraction of the cost, a tenth, maybe a seventh of it, as I was explaining earlier.
Excellent. Now, I know we're coming up on time here, so I encourage anyone, during the next break, during lunch, feel free to meet up with us. I know there was one other topic on pitfalls, which I think would have been another interesting topic to cover, but I think we're just about out of time.
Yep.
45, so I'll turn it back over. Thanks everyone for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.